Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to tonight's edition of Beyond the News. I'm Atiq Hussain. As you know, on this particular program, every night we discuss and analyze for you the leading current affairs topics of the day. On tonight's edition, we will be discussing Faisal Wada accusing the previous Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz government of stealing Sindh's share of water. Now, that's a controversial claim. He has made this before. This is not the first time he's mentioned it. The Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf's Faisal Wada, and he has again accused the previous Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz government of stealing Sindh's share of water. We'll talk about that. Of course, there was a ruckus in Parliament yesterday, which we covered on this channel. Of course, that'll be part of the discussion. Then Pakistan has secured $1 billion worth of duty-free access into China. Is that such a big accomplishment as it is being touted? Because other countries also have duty-free access to China. Pakistan is not the only one. So why is this so significant? We'll discuss that. Then the Afghanistan High Peace Council and the Afghan Taliban have decided to send a delegation to Moscow to start talks on the peace process in that country. Well, the Taliban, however, have made it clear that it's only going to be a dialogue. They're playing down the prospects of success at these particular talks in Moscow. Pakistan will also send a delegation. The United States also will send a representative. We'll discuss the prospects for peace to that war-torn country. And of course, President Donald Trump eventually and finally has fired the Attorney General Jeff Sessions. This has been on the cards for a long time now, but he's finally taken that step. He has sacked the U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who had, if you remember, recused himself from Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe. Of course, we will talk about that as well. But first, our top story tonight. Amid the tough economic conditions, securing a $1 billion duty-free market access to China is definitely a sigh of relief for the Pakistani government. This news came at a time when the country's foreign exchange reserves are continuously on the decline due to the widening trade deficit. Pakistan's exports have remained on a declining trajectory for almost 5 years now, before starting their recovery last year. It should be noted here that last year, Pakistan recorded a $37 billion trade deficit, and half of it was due to the trade imbalance with the People's Republic of China. Currently, Pakistan's exports to China stand at $1.2 billion. With the latest development, China will now receive imports of $2.2 billion from Pakistan by the end of this year. The advisor to the Prime Minister on Commerce, Industry and Investment, Abdul Razak Dawood, is hopeful that by the end of the next fiscal year, Pakistan will export goods and services worth $3.2 billion. Now that some progress has been made, Abdul Razak has urged the government and the private sector to identify potential areas, including textile, leather, agriculture, surgical goods and light engineering, for enhancing Pakistan's exports to China. It is pertinent to note here that Pakistan is not the first country to have duty-free market access to China. In fact, Bangladesh and member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are already availing the benefits of free trade agreements with China. In other news, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying has termed Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to China as successful. However, she declined to quantify the financial assistance that the People's Republic of China is willing to provide to Pakistan. Obviously, this is significant news because the Prime Minister had traveled to China in the hope of a substantial loan package or an aid package. Talks are already underway between Pakistani officials and the International Monetary Fund for the financial bailout package, and its details are expected to be finalized over the coming weeks. Now, to further discuss this development, we are now joined by our guest on the telephone, Hassan Khawar. He is a senior journalist as well as being a public policy and economic analyst. He joins us on the telephone. Hassan Saab, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you.
Thank you, Atiq Saab, for inviting me.
Yeah, good to have you, of course, on the program. As always, you heard me summarize our relations with China and the free trade prospects as well. Now, the officials have promised that Pakistan will double its exports to China in the current fiscal year. Now, obviously, this seems too good to be true, at least as far as I'm concerned. Is this a realistic goal, and is this feasible in such a short term? What do you think?
Atiq Saab, I believe that the goal is in fact realistic, but I am not excited about this because, doubling does not mean anything if you're talking about a small base. And as you said yourself, that Pakistan's current exports to China are merely $1.2 billion. So, of course, when you add about $1 billion more, it is doubling, but small base effect.
Right.
Now, the problem is that our trade deficit is touching the record high mark of $37 billion. And $1 billion duty-free access, I believe, is a very, very small step to a very, very long journey that Pakistan has to undergo to enhance its exports.
Right, right. Now, Hassan Sahab, shouldn't China be doing more? Can China do more to address Pakistan's trade deficit? Now, remember that the huge trade deficit is because Pakistan has a large imbalance with China itself. Now, can't China do more, perhaps, to take Pakistani products into its market? Is it doing enough, you think?
So, if you look at the Pak-China Free Trade Agreement, which was signed about 10 years ago, ever since, Pakistan's trade balance with China has been increasing, which manifests two facts. Number one, it was not a well-negotiated agreement. And I would not term it as if China is not doing enough. I would attribute that more to the inability of the negotiations team for Pakistan, because they did not know how to negotiate an FTA well. And secondly, China's free trade agreement with ASEAN was signed later. And ASEAN countries enjoyed a greater level of access and much lesser duties as compared to Pakistan. And much of what Pakistan could benefit from has gone to ASEAN countries. The second phase of Pak-China free trade agreement has been under negotiations for a while. And both the governments have indicated that it should be negotiated and concluded before June 2019. And I think that is going to be the litmus test for Pakistan, that if Pakistan is well prepared and if it can really identify the products that it should get preferential duty on, in which we have competitive advantage. And I think that's going to define how and how much we can benefit from China.
Okay.
But I would like to quote an example here. And that's my favorite example, Atiq Saab. If you look at Mexico, which is located right next to US, you can draw a comparison. And 30 years ago, when they were signing their free trade agreement and their trade access, people were apprehensive in Mexico. And 25, 30 years later, Mexico's exports to US alone are about $71 billion. And that's the kind of potential we are sitting right next to.
Right, yeah, you bring up a very important point, the relationship between Mexico and the United States. Now, is China doing, as I said, Bangladesh and other ASEAN countries are pretty much availing the offer that China has made to Pakistan. So is China doing anything out of the ordinary for Pakistan, given the friendship between the two countries? It seems to me that so far they haven't done anything that would be extraordinary or any more special, any different than what they're doing for say, Bangladesh and other countries.
Yes, because basically, Atiq Saab, what you are looking at is an agreement that was negotiated many, many years ago. When you look at CPEC, I think CPEC is a game changer in terms of how Pak-China relationship can evolve. Because within the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative universe, there have been some successes, but there have been a lot of critique on China as well. And CPEC is the landmark project under BRI. So it is in China's interest to make CPEC a success. Of course, it is beneficial for Pakistan. So I think Pakistan can use that leverage to negotiate a better deal also on other counts like the free trade agreement. But I think that China is going slightly ahead of what is usual for China because of CPEC. And Pak-China friendship is getting into a new phase because of CPEC.
Okay, but it seems to me that you are perhaps still optimistic that ultimately Pakistan will get some sort of a financial assistance package.
I am optimistic, and I'll tell you why. Because, a couple of $1 billion here or there is not that big a deal for China. And China has been supporting us in the last few years. Even if you look at the current calendar year, we had already received about $2 billion loan from China in the previous government's tenure. I just think they are fine-tuning the details. They are more concerned about other elements. And once these things are settled, we will get something or the else from China.
Okay.
to help our BOP problem.
Okay. So briefly, if you were to summarize Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to China, it would be a success. How would you categorize it?
I would think if you look at the media campaign surrounding the trip, I would not call that a tremendous success because expectations were set in the wrong way.
Right.
Yes, but if you look at in the larger context of Pak-China relations, the depth of the consultations, the kind of issues covered, MOUs on 15 counts signed, I think that's a very, very positive step.
Okay. Hassan Saab, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to talk to you again. Thank you. That was Hassan Khawar, senior journalist, talking to us about the Prime Minister's visit to China and the prospects for a financial assistance package to Pakistan. As you heard him say, he is optimistic that ultimately Pakistan will get a financial assistance package from China. But I thought he really hit the nail on the head when he said that Pakistan is in the habit, or I should say not Pakistan, I should say the current government and Prime Minister Khan himself is in the habit of raising expectations about everything. I think the emphasis should be on doing rather than saying. When you raise expectations about anything, obviously you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because if it doesn't happen, if you don't achieve what you have actually promised to achieve, then it would be categorized as a failure. It may be a success, but because it didn't rise to the expectations that you had set, it may well be categorized as a failure. I think that's a mistake that Prime Minister Imran Khan has been consistently making. I think his objective and his emphasis should be on delivering rather than actually talking about them. Do not raise expectations, because then whatever you achieve may be categorized as failure. Simply do it, and that, of course, I think will be categorized more often than not as a success. We will now take a break. When we come back, we will have discussion and analysis on another important current affairs topic of the day. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you after the break.